Israel, southern Israel, took a hit from an Iranian missile. It hit in the town of Beersheba, very near an apartment and an industrial complex, causing fire and damage on the ground. No reports of injuries. There are reports that this single missile made its way through the air defenses because one of the interceptors malfunctioned. There were no reports of injuries. Again, Beersheba is the same town where yesterday a missile hit the Soroka hospital, resulting in dozens of minor injuries, some of them serious. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency tells me in an exclusive interview Iran does have enough uranium for several nuclear bombs, and the regime is just a quick step away from enriching to weapons-grade uranium. However, he said he saw no plans for Iran to take that step. And he believes even at this stage, diplomacy is the path to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon.
I believe that there is a way to take this danger or this concern out of the table in a negotiated way with a very robust, as I said, I've been in conversations, very good conversations with Steve Witkoff and with the Iranians as well. I believe that there are ways in which we can make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon.
Now, Israel reports every day their fighters and drones are taking out missile systems in Iran. Today, we have images of that. The IDF says strikes were carried out in the areas of Isfahan and Tehran, saying the equipment that you see in these images are both radar installations and missile systems intended to strike Israeli aircraft. For days now, Israel says that their fighters have enjoyed air superiority, meaning they can operate at will in the skies over Iran without the risk of being shot down.
The Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime.
It's kind of a tradition down here. We tape these videotapes to the missiles. Each one is labeled evidence. This one's about a president.
I have been training for this day my whole life. Humans think this is a religious war, but I say, bah!
Imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey.
We have advanced technology these days. When the time is right, I will push the button.
This is where we launch the tapes with all the evidence. People say this war is about killing people, but really, it's about protecting our elite.
I don't know if we have nukes or not, but I got this button.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you are in the studio, ready to rip, rolling with your team, and you're about to punch live, and then President Trump goes, I've just decided to appoint a special investigator into the 2020 election for being rigged. And you're like, record scratch. I bet you're wondering how I found myself in this position. We had to change the whole show. And we thought we were going to do Iran with goats on hang gliders for the cold, and you just don't have time. You just don't have time because President Trump, minutes ago, it has not even been written up. I think we have our first article that's writing minutes ago, seconds ago, actually, what led to a slight delay in our stream today, and so we appreciate your patience, is Donald Trump said, yeah, it's time to appoint a special prosecutor to look into the stolen 2020 election. Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Lucky us. Today is Friday, June 20th, 2025. News Dump Friday. Trump demands special prosecutor for 2020 election. Could a tactical nuke be used in Iran? I hope not, because we are running, hopefully, to peace in Iran and Israel, and that's what we want, and that's what this program wants, and I hope that everyone can agree that you don't want Donald Trump to get involved in another forever war. That's all he'll be remembered for. What do you remember George W. Bush for? George W. Bush is not going to be judged kindly by history. It's just like wars and slaughter and carnage and the you don't want that. That's actually how they get you. That's the trap. So don't let them do it. Joe Biden will be remembered for the boondoggle in Ukraine. It's the same thing. So that's what we want, and it's for the protection of our boy. And you know what? Steve Bannon's having lunch at the White House, so I think we're winning, boys. Peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. Julie Kelly will be on the program. Lucky us. She knows so very much about the stolen election in 2020, along with Senator Ron Johnson. and author Alex Sawyer, who will be joining the program. She's written an exceptional book about the deep state and lawfare against President Trump. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Let's lock and load, ladies and gentlemen. First, in times of tumult, will we be nuking Iran? What's going to happen? Nobody knows. Everything's going up and down and up and down. Go gold today, ladies and gentlemen. Go gold. We say it a lot on this program, but we have the charts to prove it. Gold is just the best damn performing asset, just absolutely dunking on the S&P 500, on the stock market, on other asset classes. Gold is just solid, man. It's just sound, especially in times when major things are changing. And a lot of times, they're changing for the good these days. You got to let Trump cook. You got to let the muscles contract, okay? You got to let air get into the oxygen. Air get into the lungs, right? Oxygen get into the lungs. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, what you should be doing is making sure that your baseline is secure. You should call my friends at Advantage Gold. They can help you out. They can set up a one-on-one precious metals appointment for you today. You can text Benny to 85545. You'll learn how to legally move your IRA or 401k into physical gold or silver, like I have done. Avoid taxes and penalties using little-known IRS-approved strategy, and how you can receive up to $10,000 in free gold or silver if you qualify. Protect your retirement today before it's too late. Text Benny to 85545. That's Benny to 85545, or visit AdvantageGold.com to claim your free copy. No cost, just the truth. Okay, let's jump into the breaking news. I mean, we've covered it this entire week. 3 days ago, Kash Patel released evidence to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Chuck Grassley, in charge of that. Chuck Grassley's sidekick is Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson will be on the show. So it's going to be an exceptional show to lock in if you care about the truth of the 2020 election. But what we care about the most, actually, is the knocking down of the lies. That's what we want. We want truth, and we can handle the truth. You can release the Epstein list. We can handle it. You can release the Epstein evidence. You can release these manifestos, right, for these trans shooters. You can do it. Like, the American people can take it. What we can't take is living inside of some type of, like, strange, broken architecture of lies, some house of mirrors, right, where you're like, no, January 6th was an insurrection. No, it wasn't. Gretchen Whitmer was going to be kidnapped. No, she wasn't. The 2020 election was the most secure election in our lifetime. No, it wasn't. Here's the map. Here it is. This is the map right here from Heritage Foundation of all of the election fraud cases currently going on in America. These are cases that are being prosecuted for election fraud, some of them mass election fraud, but all of it is mass election fraud, and there's a case going on in every single state. Some cases, like Minnesota, there are hundreds of cases, individual cases of election fraud. I wonder what's going on in Minneapolis. I wonder why they could have election fraud in that state. I wonder why, right? Very interesting. Minnesota should be a red state. Like, if you look at the numbers, like, by and large, you look at the numbers, Minnesota, more than any other Midwestern state, should really be voting red. It don't make no sense, exactly, except for the fraud. And these graphs didn't make any sense. We all saw these graphs, obviously, on election night. Nobody could ever account for that little blip right there at 2 a.m. Nobody's ever been able to, like, explain that. Or this one. This is our favorite. If you watch the show regularly, this is just our absolute favorite. Kamala Harris, no ID. Only winning the states. Only winning states with no ID. No ID check. Now, what does that mean for a state like this? Well, for a state like this, typically what it means is you go in, you have same-day voter registration. All you got to do is flash your driver's license, and you get either a paper ballot or a mail-in ballot. Okay? Now, many times they just mail those ballots. So in some states, they mail the ballots out to every address. When I was living in D.C., they did this. And because I wasn't the first owner of my home, and there were, like, multiple other owners, I got a stack of ballots this big in D.C. Anybody else have this experience? Where you were mailed a bunch of ballots? You know what crippling that is for our election system? Did anybody else have this experience? Let me know in the chat. There was a stack of, I got a bunch of people's ballots. Obviously, I could have opened them and I could have voted for those people and put them in. And then what happens is once the vote is separated from the envelope, there's no telling. And so states like this with no voter ID, you can just commit open season election fraud. And this is what it looks like. This is what election fraud looks like right here. 20 million people just appearing out of nowhere and then disappearing overnight. If I were to show you this graph, these are the elections, of course, for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, which are on the level, all right? They both won the popular vote, right? Obama and Clinton won the popular vote. Nobody's disputing that. Donald Trump was able to win and defeat Hillary Clinton in the Electoral College. The math works out in favor of Donald Trump in that election. It didn't in the Barack Obama election, right? Barack Obama won very easily on election night. It's the way the cookie crumbles. But the math is all there. Even in 2024, the math was very there. The reason why is that you could see that President Trump is gaining a coalition. There's a lot of people joining with President Trump. Look at his vote number. The amount of people that are voting for President Trump, very high. Like, it's increasing as President Trump runs, as people understand who President Trump is and his policies. That's very natural. That's a very natural progression for Donald Trump. It's a very natural progression for the MAGA movement, because the MAGA movement is ascendant. What don't make no sense is 20 million extra people voting for a corpse and then not showing up in the next election. Where the hell did they go? Is it a rapture? What happened there exactly? We keep asking. Members of Congress keep telling us, I don't know. Boy, it sure would be interesting to find out. Where did they go? Boy. Now we know because of Kash Patel this week. Kash Patel put up this, he tweeted this article from Just the News. He says, listen, I just get handed over to Congress some of the reasons why, you could see those 20 million people just disappear overnight. Kash Patel handed over to Congress evidence that the Chi-Coms, Communist Chinese, that they had a massive operation to print fake driver's licenses to give to Chinese nationals, or anyone, but Chinese nationals living in America, so that they could get a ballot and they could vote. Some places you have to just go in and show your driver's license, right? Flash driver's license, they're like, good, got it. Places like California, you don't have to show anything. And places like in DC, they mail everyone a ballot, and guys like me end up with stacks of ballots this big at my house. So it's just, it's just horrible systems in these blue states. That's why Kamala Harris only wins blue states. But I can show you how this worked. It's wild. In Michigan, in the state of Michigan, a Chinese student is being charged with dozens of felonies for voting illegally. They caught him, actually. The Chinese student with a fake license voted in the Michigan election. We have the article. Or we're getting it in just a second. Chinese student voted in Michigan. This is in 2024. And they caught this person, and it became, there it is right there. They caught this Chinese kid, and this became big national news. So then now they have to charge him because they proved it. They proved that this Chinese kid voted illegally. Boy, I wonder who he voted for. And what did the Michigan Secretary of State say? Sorry. We so sorry. We sorry. They said, look, we can't do anything about it. This communist voted for Kamala Harris, and the vote just counts. Screw you. Chinese national at University of Michigan charged with illegally voting in 2024 election. There it is. How many, okay, so this is the ones that you find. So how does it work? Do you own a house? Do you live in a house? Do you live in an apartment? Doesn't matter. If you live inside of a domicile and you see one cockroach, what does that mean? Does that mean there's only one? If you see one mouse scurry across the floor, everyone's seen it. It's horrible. I don't like living with rats or mice. If you see one rodent scurry across your floor, does that mean there's just one? No. It means there's a nest, and they're inside of your home, and they're about to infest your home. If you catch one Chinese national illegally voting in the election, how many were there exactly? Well, according to the Border Patrol, in a story that was barely covered in 2020, obviously because of other psyops run on our country, January 6th, you really when you look at the timing of these things, you look at the announcement of this stuff that China was planning on rigging our election in favor of Joe Biden. And you realize J6 was set up in order to destroy that news cycle. President Trump was getting to the point. President Trump knows about this. In fact, we have a clip of President Trump explaining that he's running in 2024 because China stole his election. Alex, do we have that clip? Let me know. But it's a great one. It's something that really lets you know that Trump understands where this is coming from. So the point is in 2020, how much more of this was happening? How much was happening that we didn't catch? How many cockroaches are there exactly? If we're able to see one and step on it, like we did in Michigan, how many more voted? Well, we have the map. We have the chart. We can prove it. We'll show you the data. There's 20 million at least. You have an infestation in this country. It's really bad. It leads to embarrassing and humiliating series of events. But I want to get to, President Trump first. This is what President Trump has called for. And we're going to go through like why this is so mandatory and necessary. Will you ever catch people in voter fraud? Well, you do here and there. You do. And we're going to go through some of those cases. What was more important is with President Trump appointing a special prosecutor is that the people who can want to or are planning on, and of course they are planning on it, committing voter fraud again, it's going to dissuade them from doing that. President Trump is destroying with a battle axe and a sledgehammer the architecture of globalism in this country. Everything that they're doing with Act Blue, everything they're doing with defunding USAID, the full-scale investigations into January 6th, is offense. And it's the kind of offense we should be fighting. It is a far more exigent and important battle than a battle with Iran right now. Is the battle for the future of this country. We should be dead set and iron focused, locked in like cold steel on the nuclear bomb that is in this country, which is 20 million criminal aliens that have the opportunity to vote and rig our elections, a Chinese Communist Party that's flooding our nation with fake driver's licenses so they can vote, and an administration that won't do anything about it because they benefit from it, right, with Joe Biden. Donald Trump is going to put that to an end. Here's President Trump this morning on Truth Social. 0 border crossings for the month for Trump versus 60,000 for Sleepy Joe. This is all connected, obviously. The more criminal aliens you get here, the more criminal aliens you get voting. We've shown you the proof of that with a Chinese national illegally voting for Kamala Harris in the election. How many more criminal aliens voted in California where there's absolutely no checks at all? Michigan's kind of like a light red state anyway. Donald Trump has won it a couple of times. So in state like California, where is that? Let's continue to read. A man who lost the 2020 election by a man who lost the 2020 election by a landslide, says President Trump. Biden was grossly incompetent. The 2020 election was a total fraud. The evidence is massive and overwhelming. A special prosecutor must be appointed. This cannot be allowed to happen in the United States of America again. It's true. Let the work begin. This is what a crooked man and his corrupt cronies have done to our country in 4 years. It's grossly indescribable. Make America great again. Donald Trump saying a special prosecutor must be appointed in order to look into our stolen election in 2020. Why are they so angry about this? Why are they so upset? If you didn't steal the election, let's say a cop comes and knocks on my door. Hey, Benny, sorry, got a problem. We're going to have to look in your backyard for the, buried corpses of a serial killer. We think you are he. And I would say, well, that's an interesting twist of my day. Have at it. In fact, I'll help you shovel. Because I'm not a serial killer and there's nothing buried back there. So who cares? Who cares? In fact, the more you look, spend all the time you need. I'll get you a coffee. The more you look, coppers, the more exonerated I get because there ain't no evidence back there, right? It's not what I do. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not a serial killer, and I'll be happy to prove it to you by helping you shovel. Okay? Let's go. That's how innocent people think about things, right? Cop stops you, open the trunk. Okay, fine. What are you going to find? My diapers back there, right? I'm going to go visit Joe Biden. I got diapers in the back of my car. This is the way the innocent people act. What you'll find now is absolute and total demon screams from the left, losing their effing mind over this. They're going to freak out because they know they're guilty. Cop knocks on my door and says, we want to go dig for bodies in your backyard. and I start profusely sweating, I close the door, slam it, tell them to get a warrant, lock it, then I flee the county. What does that say, right? This is how Democrats react to these things. It's how they're reacting right now. They're losing their minds that this show in particular is like continues to ask elected officials about the stolen election. Well, they're in for it today when we have Ron Johnson on. Ooh, baby. And Julie Kelly in just a moment. Trump calls for a special prosecutor for alleged election fraud in 2020, claiming he won in a landslide. Come on, baby. Let's freaking go. Just a reminder that 18 of 19 bellwether counties went for Trump. 18 of 19 bellwether counties. Wow. Very interesting. Trump won in a landslide in 2024. So how many bellwether counties went for Trump then? Oh, 18 of 19. Same thing. Trump won in a landslide against Joe Biden. President Donald Trump has called for the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate the allegations that there was election fraud. This comes 2 days after FBI Director Kash Patel revealed that he had shared alarming allegations about manipulation of the 2020 election with Republican members of Congress. The FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 election, including allegations of interference by the CCP, Patel wrote, referring to the Chinese Communist Party. I have immediately declassified these materials, turned them over to Chuck Grassley for review. Trump just posted, obviously, that there needs to be a special prosecutor. Trump calling for a special prosecutor to investigate the alleged election fraud of 2020 serves both political and strategic purposes despite the lack of credible evidence. Despite the lack of credible evidence. We're going to get there, okay? Don't worry. We, unlike the rest of the corporate media scum here, actually bring their receipts. Dozens of courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court, rejected challenges in 2020 results. Trump's own Department of Justice found no evidence of fraud sufficient to alter the outcome. Trump's insistence on a rigged election remains central to his messaging. In fact, Trump's calling the Chinese Communist Party out on helping Joe Biden win was key to his decision to run again in 2024. This is a wild clip. Thank you to the eagle-eyed ALX for finding this one. Shout out to ALX. I know he's very popular with all the single ladies in the chat. ALX is single. And you know, now he's a homeowner. Boy, what an eligible bachelor, you know? Just think about it, think about it, chat. ALX. Think about it, Massachusetts, all you Massachusetts ladies. I'm going to get arrested. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, ALX, eagle-eyed, found this. Just a reminder, this is Trump's announcement in 2023, running for president. He said, you know what? The Chinese communists stole the election from me. Let's go.
Of it. No president had ever sought or received $1 for our country from China until I came along and we were getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Many people think that because of this, China played a very active role in the 2020 election. Just saying. Sure, that didn't happen. Instead.
This is classic Trump. They say there's no evidence of election fraud. Okay. Well, we already put up our handy-dandy map. Here's our map. There is evidence of mass election fraud. There's evidence in every effing state. You retards. And then more importantly, there's evidence on a state level. There's evidence in every corner of every single state. Like, here we go. Here's Connecticut. 5 charged with election crimes stemming from 2023 Bridgeport primary. Oh, okay. How many charges are there? Just one individual, Wanda the Stuffer is her name. She's facing 92 separate criminal charges. Why? Because she shoved a garbage bag full of ballots into drop boxes to rig an election. One of my favorites is from the state of New Jersey. In New Jersey, in Paterson, New Jersey, the president of the city council and his wife went door to door stealing mail-in ballots where people had already voted, plucked them out of their mailboxes, and then voted for them, changed their votes, and mailed in the ballots in order to win the election. Boy, oh boy, would you look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have the exciting story out of Massachusetts. where a series of ballots were stolen on camera. You can see it literally happening on camera here. So yeah, these are the person's Ring doorbell cam. You can see said individual, don't know who it is, just walking up and snagging the ballots. What does this result in? This results in a Massachusetts resident trying to vote. And they said, no, you already voted. She said, show me the papers. She says, that's not my signature. Somebody voted for me. This is insanity. Here's the clip.
Second report filed was from this Lawrence woman who's still waiting for elections officials to decide whether her in-person vote will count or the mail-in, which she says has her signature forged.
How come it's not going to be counted if I'm voting right in front of you and I'm telling you that that vote that you have there is not mine?
State elections officials are now sorting through these allegations and were told the results would be delivered before the candidates begin their new terms in January.
We're on it. The minute we heard about it today, we took action. We've had a history of sending people to jail when they've committed crimes. And that's what we'll do here.
And there's also another component to these cases. If that mail was stolen out of those mailboxes, that's a federal offense, and we're told there could be a federal investigation on the way. Live in Boston tonight, Darren Botello, NBC 10 Boston.
You need to put people in prison for a long time. This is the way that you stop. This is the way that you stop this chaos. You need to take people and destroy their lives. They need to go to jail forever. And you need to make them, you need to make them famous in the bad time kind of way. You need to give us a face and a name, and you need to show the world, and you need to destroy them. And you keep doing that. Speaking of being eagle-eyed, man, going through old Biden clips, it is so hard to watch. I can't believe like what we've been through. It's like going through texts with a psychotic ex-girlfriend who's on like SSRIs and all like berserker mode out of her mind. These old Biden clips are just so hard to watch, but you just got to listen to this one. It's just one that we often play where Joe Biden's straight up. I want to play you the difference between like two presidents, okay? So here's how both presidents handle election fraud. Because this isn't Donald Trump's first action on election fraud. Here's Joe Biden explaining his take on election fraud. Please listen closely.
We have put together, and you guys did it for our the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Inclusive, what I like is the inclusive voter fraud. That means they're bringing in the Chinese, okay? That means they're bringing in the illegal Haitians. They're including everyone in the voter fraud. So that's one approach to voter fraud. Again, you'll know who the criminals are when you see who's sweating here after this announcement by President Trump of a special prosecutor. Here's President Trump's approach to voter fraud, signing an executive order to end it all and put everyone in jail who's guilty of it. Here we go.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order for your attention on the very important subject of election integrity. We believe that this executive order is the farthest reaching executive action taken in the history of the Republic to secure our elections. Among numerous other aspects of this executive order, this is going to cut down on illegal immigrants on the voter rolls, ensure that the Department of Homeland Security and the data that they have available is being fully weaponized to ensure that illegal immigrants aren't voting. This will include a citizenship question on the federal voting form for the first time. This executive order instructs the EAC to cut federal funding to states that don't take reasonable steps to secure their election. This calls on the Department of Justice to vigorously prosecute election crimes, particularly in states that we don't believe are in compliance with federal law around election integrity. I could go on for a while, sir, but the compliance with National Election Day rules, cracking down and investigating and prosecuting foreign interference in our elections, revoking President Biden's Executive Order 14019, which essentially weaponized government to corrupt and pollute our election process. There's a lot in here, but we believe that these are very important steps that we need to be taking as an administration at your direction to ensure that our elections are as secure as they possibly can be.
Excellent. That was like, I don't know, that was like the second week, maybe the first week, President Trump in the CHR. And who else is in the CHR? Somebody who is under attack right now. They're trying to pull the whole Elon treatment on Tulsi Gabbard. We love Tulsi Gabbard. She's a friend of the show, a friend of the program. We know her to be an excellent patriot who loves this country, is deeply rock-ribbed, committed to ensuring that this nation is strong and that we are not psyoped into more deep state wars and that we're not psyoped by the deep state. Part of that is going to be cleaning up our own house first before we try and bomb any country in the Mideast. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tulsi Gabbard, really incredible. In the last meeting with President Trump, cabinet meeting broadcast in the White House, Tulsi cracks open this can of whoop ass and says, guess what we found when we investigated voter fraud? Watch.
I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Oh, just one more, Klein. I just can't help it. You want to bring about paper ballots? You want to bring about paper ballots in the election? Wow. I mean, that's an insane idea. It's only the biggest, most psychotic radicals could be in charge, would ever promote that. Right? You got to be like a right-wing insurrectionist to say paper ballots. What are you, a Luddite, a caveman? What are you, fall out of a coconut tree? Because Kamala Harris has endorsed this idea. In fact, Kamala Harris was the face of election security in the United States Senate. Before she decided that rigging elections was good and would get her power, Kamala Harris sounded like this.
Set up systems to audit, but also what they can do around best practices and best machinery. We are talking with them about the fact that it is probably best that you do not have your election system connected to the internet, because that will create greater vulnerabilities. And then look at where we are now in this year of our Lord 2018. We're talking about paper ballots, but that actually might be one of the smartest systems. Going back to, a day when we could...
Wow. We're just talking about paper ballots. Watching those kind of clips, Kamala Harris, supporting all of President Trump's executive orders, which is a very fun little thread that we weave on this program, to be able to go back. That was just a big shout out to the team that runs the show. Just it's to be able to weave those things together is really special. Man, there is no defense to it. But watching Joe Biden say he's creating the largest voter fraud, most inclusive voter fraud operation in American history, will probably spike your blood pressure. I have high blood pressure, ladies and gentlemen. Got to make sure that you take care of that. The old ticker doesn't work too hard in my family. Unfortunately, heart disease runs in my family, as it does in most American families. That is why I use 120 Life. 120 Life is an excellent way to manage high blood pressure in an all-natural way. Don't want to be having major surgeries or getting stents or any of that stuff. That can be all these consequences. You want to not mess with the ticker if you can avoid it. And so make good, healthy decisions. 120 Life is a blend of 5 all-natural ingredients. I drink one every single morning. My kids try and pry it from my hands because they're like, give me that. It's delicious. It is a delicious drink, ladies and gentlemen, and it's proven to lower your blood pressure. Nearly one in 2 adults in this country have high blood pressure. I'm one of them. So make sure that you're taking control. 120 Life doesn't just help you manage that. It can help you with diabetes or other major circulation issues. It's not only a delicious drink, it's also endorsed by 750 doctors. 120 Life is trusted by healthcare professionals, with hundreds of doctors recommending it. 120 Life can provide visible, measurable changes in blood pressure. Use a simple monitor at home to track your progress. For a limited time, you can try 120 Life, save 20%. Just use the code BENNY at checkout. 120life.com. 120 Life offers risk-free trial and a full refund if you don't see lower numbers in 2 weeks. Go to 120life.com Use the code Benny. 120 LIFE.com. Use code Benny. Save 20%. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Kelly joining us in just a minute. Julie Kelly will be on and locked in. It looks like the producers are telling me that we need to hold for just a moment and that she's not ready to join. So here we go. There is something that we really wanted to chat with Julie Kelly about, so we might as well talk about it right now. What's the deal with this report from yesterday? The FBI was planning on investigating Donald Trump for saying the Pledge of Allegiance. This from Miranda Devine. We did cover it on the show yesterday. I thought it was very interesting. How obsessive, psychotic, vile, and venomous the FBI was against President Trump in these new emails that have been released, also by Chuck Grassley. Again, we're going to have Chuck Grassley's sidekick on the program. His name is Ron Johnson. He's a great dude. Internal FBI emails reveal rogue agents and prosecutors in the Biden DOJ were looking for ways to pile on new criminal charges against Donald Trump over the J6 Capitol riot. This time, they were trying to use Donald Trump's involvement with the J6 prisoner choir based on a single partisan news article. That's really amazing how they do this. The wrap-up smear, man. Can we do some work to nail down Trump's role in this? Said prosecutor J.P. Cooney to DOJ colleagues on March 8th, 2023, in an email, subject line, J6 prisoner choir DJT. Trump collaborates song with J6 defendants. The song is beautiful. I'm sure you've heard it. The moment that we got to Mar-a-Lago after Trump's election victory, we heard Trump play it. This is what it sounded like. Everybody, this is President Trump's message to people that he's not going to forget the J6 prisoners. And he didn't follow through on that message.
And to the republic for which it stands,
this is Trump just saying the Pledge of Allegiance. That's it. That's all that happens here. The left is now raping, pillaging, rampaging, burning our cities to the ground, burning American flags. And Trump's recording for charity, recording with the J6 choir. These demons. They really do hate this guy. They really do just legitimately hate this country. It's just wild that Kash Patel, upon his hearing to become FBI director, got asked about this constantly. Thank you for reminding me of this. Democrats obsess over asking Kash Patel. For some reason, this little choir made up of prisoners wrongly incarcerated January 6th. Donald Trump just saying the Pledge of Allegiance, them just singing the national anthem. This so triggered libs that it was the only thing they wanted to ask Kash Patel about. Here's an example. Here's just some examples of that.
He produced a song with the so-called J6 choir. Those were individuals in prison for having attacked police officers.
Next topic. I know you've been asked about the J6 prison choir prior in this hearing.
Now, you've claimed, Mr. Patel, you didn't know about any of these people in the choir. Is that right?
Tell me about your J6 choir. What is that?
Well, it's not my choir. It's simply a recording that was utilized to raise funds for families in need of nonviolent offenders.
Who sings on this recording?
I don't know, Senator.
What did you have to do with it?
Simply to raise funds to assist families of nonviolent offenders whose kids needed college education payments and whose rent needed being paid.
We just made a charity song where we sang the Pledge of Allegiance. That's it. The end. And this was the major line of inquiry. Oh, got him now, right? Somebody who's helped out J6 prisoners more than any living person in the country this side of Donald Trump, I think I can say confidently, is the great Julie Kelly, who we're honored to have back on the program. Let's go. Julie, good morning.
Good morning, Benny. How are you? Happy Friday.
Just
TGIF.
fine. Looking to be prosecuted because I said the Pledge of Allegiance by the FBI here. Yeah. I'm sure you read this article from Miranda Devine and these FBI emails. Now you know many people in this J6 choir. You've talked about it on our program. What does it say about the mental state of the FBI that they were like rabidly frothing at the mouth, looking to prosecute Donald Trump for saying the Pledge of Allegiance in a charitable song for J6 prisoners?
Right. So it just, again, shows these dirty cops at the FBI, these dirty prosecutors like J.P. Cooney, who I've covered for years. Yes. In fact, get this, J.P. Cooney, who has left the Department of Justice, he was on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team. He was on Jack Smith's team. I sat next to him in April in Jeb Bossberg's courtroom when he was holding a hearing related to the president's Alien Enemies Act. He's still following the lawfare, J.P. Cooney, that he helped initiate. And so what these emails demonstrate, confirm once again, is that they were desperate to find anything because the J6 indictment was so weak, 4 counts, 2 of them eventually tossed by the Supreme Court. They were so weak, that indictment, that they were looking for anything else. So enriching himself or some sort of conspiracy charge, probably. But this is what Pam Bondi and her team and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are up against at this DOJ and FBI. These aren't one-offs, right, Benny? We know this. This is a systematically corrupt organization, weaponized against Donald Trump, his associates, and his voters. And, kudos for Chuck Grassley for forcing, getting these documents, for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to release them. And I'm certain, and I'm hearing that much more we will be getting more disclosures soon.
Good. I mean, this week, the disclosure of just the Chinese nationals and the Communist Party trying to rig our elections is pretty huge. It seems like not only is that massive, but also that might explain the 20 million disappearing votes that happened in the year 2020. It may also explain why it was covered up. Why Kash Patel says there's this locked room at the FBI that had all this evidence shoved away into it. Chris Wray was asked about this. He's like, oh, that's nothing. It seems like something, obviously. But what do you make of this?
It's difficult to get these documents. It's not like we have talked about, Benny. It's not like Chris Wray or Merrick Garland or Lisa Monaco just left all of these records on nice little piles on Pam Bondi's desk or Kash Patel's desk, right? They have to really dig in, find the right people, understand where these are archived or housed, and then get them, send them over to Senator Grassley and others who are requesting them, and then release. So it is a very involved process with people still at the DOJ and FBI who don't want to help them, right? They want to be part of the cover-up. So I see that the president today is asking for a special prosecutor to look into 2020 election fraud. We'll see how that unfolds. I think that the DOJ and FBI are doing a really good job so far, but if this is sort of the tip of the iceberg, even for China, let alone all of the other malfeasance that we know happened before and on election day in 2020, this is an almost insurmountable task to expose all of it.
It seems like, though, the special prosecutor would at the very least put a very large chilling effect on potential voter fraud. I mean, if you know that you're going to take it seriously and people are going to go to jail, and you just have to put a couple people in handcuffs, right? And march them out and make them the face of this, then it really does limit the operation, right? It sends a message.
It absolutely does. And I'm wondering if this is what Chuck Grassley, the FBI and DOJ are working towards, and that could be some sort of perjury charge against Christopher Wray, because you've played his testimony in September of 2020, where he downplayed any Chinese interference because, of course, emphasizing, again, the Russians, right? The Ruskies are working with Donald Trump and MAGA world to rig the 2020 again. So, and also let's put this in context of what the FBI also was doing at that point. Burying the Hunter Biden laptop, which they had had since December of 2019, working intimately with Chan out of the FBI San Francisco field office in daily communications with big tech to designate any reporting on Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation, foreign disinformation, Russian disinformation. And of course, Benny, my personal favorite FBI interference in the 2020 election, the Whitmer Fednapping hoax. All of this was happening at the same time, August, September, October of 2020. So this was a wide operation by Chris Wray's FBI on the watch of Bill Barr, by the way, the Attorney General, to do whatever they could to ensure that Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in November of 2020.
That's very interesting that you bring up Bill Barr. He has become a titular character in this story, mainly because of his inaction or because of his potential cover-up capacity, whether we're talking about Epstein or whether we're talking about him saying, no, there was absolutely no election fraud at all. And we can put up map after map and story after story, and we would do it for the next 7 hours until our voice cracked and broke to talk about all of the election fraud that occurs in this country. There is mass election fraud that happens, but it's Bill Barr who looks at graphs like this and says, no, this is perfectly fine, right? Like, it's Bill Barr who looks at the graphs like the 20 million people that just disappeared election to election, 20 million Democrats that I guess, they just must be such good Christians that they raptured early, I think, is what happened here, Julie. What the hell?
Well,
what the hell's going on with Bill Barr? Like, can you explain this?
I think Bill Barr needs questions, and this is going to be tough for Republicans, especially in the Senate, to do. But remember, it was Bill Barr on November 30th of 2020 who told not the president that there was no evidence, at least decisive evidence of election or voting fraud. He told the Associated Press. That's how we found out about it. So Bill Barr, less than a month after the election day of 2020, telling the Associated Press there is no evidence of election or vote results. How did he know? As we know, it was only, what, Benny, at that point, 40,000 vote difference in 2020 between a few states that determined that Joe Biden had, with this destroyed intelligence report about Chinese interference to try to help Joe Biden. He needs to answer why they kept Hunter Biden's laptop under, and this FBI operation to designate it as any reporting as foreign disinformation. And I will add the Whitmer Fednapping hoax that I know from my reporting and covering both FBI and the DOJ. Bill Barr, not only complicit because he's the Attorney General, right? The FBI is under the Department of Justice. So complicit in either these operations, ignorant about it, which calls into question why he was even there, but more importantly, his lackluster, non-existent, I guess, investigation into voting fraud in 2020. He has to answer these questions, Benny.
Yeah, I mean, his non-existent investigation into that, his non-existent investigation into the, into threats against Supreme Court justices, and it is like wild that people still hold him in any type of high regard. Is probably the single least effective or most effective, I guess, depending on where you're coming from, Attorney General, because he really was able to finish the job there in 2020. He was able to complete the dirty hoax that they ran on the president and the American people. And they did so with this smug air of entitlement and DC swamp that is just repulsive when you look back on it. Okay.
Well, keep in mind too, Benny, he threatened to quit if Donald Trump fired Chris Wray, which he wanted to do in 2019 and 2020. Bill Barr threatened to quit. Now, unfortunately, he didn't allow that to happen. Donald Trump should have said, great, I get a twofer. I get rid of Chris Wray and Bill Barr, put somebody else in there. So this is how he was not only running his department in the FBI. He was very close with Chris Wray, but also attempting to bully the president to keep in place a wholly corrupt, dishonest, and partisan actor, Chris Wray, as head of the FBI.
It's incredible to have actual motion on this, to have Kash Patel giving up these documents and to be able to hopefully maybe see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I know that you're very well sourced. Julie, can you elucidate for our audience what's going to come next? What do you expect out of this Grassley reveal? This is probably the largest reveal we've ever had when it comes to mass election fraud, this Chinese operation, linked, of course, with the Border Patrol finding 20,000 Chinese-made fake IDs at the border. Well, if they found them, how many actually got into the country? We know that Chinese nationals voted in the 2024 election, and those votes counted. We know they're being charged and prosecuted. We know that this op happened and that it's still happening in the country. We have the photos of the fake IDs that are all Chinese that came across. I mean, this is a real op, wasn't it, Julie?
It appears to be that way. Now, there are other reasons why people get fake IDs from China. So that could be part of it too. But I am told that there is a lot more coming related to Chinese interference in the election. So we will be standing by to see what that is. But to your point, where is this going? Well, we can't just have letters and records released, right? We can't just say this was happening. These top officials lied. They covered it up. They tried to divert attention away from election interference to, the Whitmer Fednapping hoax or, this Russian disinformation campaign we were told about, the Biden family crime racket. So there has to be accountability. So I don't think that Senator Grassley and his staff, or certainly the FBI, Kash and Dan, are just releasing this to say, hey, we got the information. But look, statute of limitations is quickly winding down, right? So if you have a 5-year statute of limitations on a perjury count against Christopher Wray or any of his associates, or conspiracy charges, which is sort of what these emails about the J6 choir and other emails we have, right, Benny? You and I have talked about all the correspondence between the Biden White House and the DOJ, the National Archives, to concoct the classified documents case. Over those records. So again, this is the huge agenda on the desk of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and her team. So we know that this was a wide-ranging conspiracy. But look, if we have a 5-year statute of limitations, that's coming up rather quickly. So let's hope that this is exactly the direction where the DOJ and FBI with Senator Grassley, where this is headed.
We have Senator Ron Johnson on right after you, so I just want to end with this. What would be your recommendation, given the fact that you are a subject matter expert on January 6th, on this 2020 election, and on the corruption inside of the FBI? Clearly, the judiciary inside of the Judiciary Committee is actually doing real work on this, which is, clearly the Judiciary Committee is finally doing real work on this, and we're thankful for that under Grassley and under Ron Johnson. What would be your advice?
Well, my advice would be to put together some criminal referrals. So if they send criminal referrals to the DOJ and FBI about what they have uncovered, Ron Johnson from the very
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. It's not you. It's not our feed. Unfortunately, it's Julie Kelly here, and I really wanted to hear what she had to say, ladies and gentlemen, because, all right, well, here we go. Let's give it another shot. Julie, for your Christmas present, I'm buying you Ethernet, okay? I'm going to buy you an Ethernet connection.
Usually it works, but I don't know what's happening today.
It's okay. It's the Communist Chinese. They always do this.
It is, for sure. I'm sorry.
Just really quickly, just finish your thought there. So your advice to Ron Johnson.
Would be put together as solid of the case as you can to send some criminal referrals to the DOJ so that can get the ball rolling, get some prosecutions going while we still have time.
Yes. Any names you would recommend?
I have so many names, but I think given what we have right now, we could start with Chris Wray. I think that there is that he committed perjury, and not only his testimony, but documents that he also signed off on that said the Chinese did not meaningfully interfere with the election.
All right. Well, thank you, Julie. Godspeed. Everybody follow Julie Kelly, obviously. And again, Julie Kelly has been so wonderful to me and my family. She once sent my kids ice cream. I know, it's possible. She sent us ice cream in the mail, which was so cool, in this giant cooler when we had our third baby. And so we're very thankful for Julie Kelly. We will be sending her Ethernet and a gig up and a gig down for all of her incredible media hits. Godspeed, Julie. We love you, and everybody go follow Julie Kelly. 870,000 Americans already do. Be one of them. Godspeed.
Thanks, Benny.
Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, the great Senator Ron Johnson from the woods of Wisconsin joins us, crashing in from the Judiciary Committee and a number of other committees like Homeland Security with some major breaking news this week. It's our honor to have him. Welcome, Ron Johnson, live. Senator, a lot of news going on. Actually, I didn't know if you were going to be in Wisconsin or not, so I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping. But it looks like it every time I see that beautiful mantle fireplace behind you. I assume that you are in Wisconsin.
Yep. I'm here back in Oshkosh, correct.
All right. God's country up there. All right. So let's talk about the opposite of God's country. What was revealed by Chuck Grassley this week, Kash Patel giving evidence of mass Chinese manipulation of the 2020 election. Can you expound on this and unpack what you learned in your committee this week?
Sure. First of all, let me explain the investigatory process here when you're a member of Congress. First of all, whistleblowers are often reluctant to come to Congress because their names get blown. They're more likely to go to journalists like Julie, or they'll go to potentially one senator like Senator Grassley, or they'll come to my office, and they don't want us to talk to anybody else because, again, they're freaking out about their name being exposed. So right now we are depending, I believe what happened with this revelation is a whistleblower came forward to Senator Grassley's office and gave them some documentation. Here's what's happening inside the Department of Justice. The Trump administration had to terminate a number of people within the Department of Justice because you couldn't trust them. They haven't been able to rehire, and they haven't filled up the ranks. So we are just sitting by waiting for documentation from the FBI, from the Department of Justice, so we can do our investigation, barring having whistleblowers come forward with documentation. So we don't have the kind of power. Yeah, we can subpoena, but the administration's largely ignore those subpoenas. For example, I issued a very friendly subpoena to Bobby Kennedy and HHS. They're trying to comply, but the deep state does not give its secrets up easily. And so there's all kinds of roadblocks. We've gotten a few thousands of pages. We've got enough information, for example, to hold one hearing that pretty well proved that the health agencies hid the fact that they had signals on myocarditis very early on by February, March, April, May of 2021. But I'll use an example. And the reason I know this is I just met with Judge Trupas, who highly respected judge here in Wisconsin, agreed to represent President Trump in the 2020 lawsuit in terms of the alternate slate of electors. He is being persecuted with lawfare. I mean, running up legal bills in excess of $1 million. We're trying to figure out to what extent is Josh Kaul, our Attorney General, and the people engaged in lawfare against Judge Trupas, how do they coordinate with the Biden Justice Department? We can't find out. Judge Trupas was just in Washington, D.C. trying to get those answers. We cannot get the documentation out of the Department of Justice, the FBI. So, again, it's not that people don't want this. It's just that we are, right now, the Department of Justice is understaffed with Trump appointees, and the long-term employees, the deep state, they're just frustrating everybody's efforts. So this is going to be a slog. This is not, I understand what Julie Kelly said. I wish we had the information, the documentation to provide the referrals for criminal investigation. But quite honestly, when the Department of Justice, when they turn those documents over to us, they've got the evidence. They ought to be doing these investigations and putting forward indictments themselves.
They shouldn't be waiting on the Senate as like a bank shot. You're saying that they should be holding themselves accountable internally.
Well, again, the Senate, if we get whistleblowers and we get information that maybe they don't have, that's one thing. That'd be a rationale for a criminal referral from Congress. The problem is most of the documents we need reside within the FBI and Department of Justice. They have the capability of getting that if they have enough personnel to do so that are willing to do so. But again, you've probably got deep staters who participated in this. Now they're probably participating in a cover-up. So again, people they have a pretty good track record of being able to cover up their wrongdoing. And my guess, that's what's happening within the Department of Justice and FBI. Again, it's not that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi aren't trying. Like me, they're like a mosquito in a nudist colony. It's a target-rich environment. The problem is they don't have anybody there trying to extract the information to help them with their investigations.
Julie Kelly has done an enormous amount of investigations on this, and she says that Christopher Wray may be guilty of perjury. Have you seen anything to that effect, Senator?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. But again, you have to have the documentation. And we just don't have enough.
So right now, with the bombshell that the Chinese government, you had whistleblowers, credible whistleblowers, the Chinese government was trying to put fake IDs into the system here in this country in order to rig the mail-in balloting process, which makes a ton of sense to us, knowing how loose that system and securities were. I was living in D.C. at the time. There were like 20 mail-in ballots sent to my house alone. I didn't ask for them. The Border Patrol was able to nab 20,000 fake ballots that were printed for Chinese nationals and trying to be smuggled across our border. So how many actually got in? And now we have Chinese students voting illegally in the 2024 election. They're being charged. So this really does seem to stand to reason. Can you explain the evidence that you have right now for this scheme?
Well, in terms of evidence I have, it's pretty minimal. You've had 4 years of the Biden administration in office being able to cover this stuff up. If they found evidence themselves, they probably destroyed it. You got people not talking, getting their story straight. So it's always difficult to prove criminal activity beyond a reasonable doubt because criminals cover up their activity. So this is not easy to do. What you can find is threads, and you guys pull on those threads to see if there's more documentation, more evidence. But again, I just don't be expecting some bombshell revelation that provides you all the information, all the receipts, all the evidence you need to convict people. That's not how these investigations work. Particularly when you've got the wrongdoers with their administration in office for 4 years, try and cover up everything that they might have done.
So you're saying that your instinct is saying that perhaps a lot of this evidence has been destroyed or potentially doesn't exist anymore. Kash Patel recently on a Joe Rogan podcast said he had to go and hunt down a locked room at the FBI where hidden evidence was stashed away and that they're going through that right now. Can you elucidate for us that process since you're working so closely with Kash?
Well, first of all, something I have firsthand experience with, we issued a subpoena to HHS. The individual, Tom Shimabukuro, was in charge of the safety surveillance system. So we want to have all the communications out of his computer. It took us almost a month to find out, is he still working at the CDC? We, to this day, do not have any communications, I don't believe, off of his server coming from his account. We've got communications where he's, copied on them or part of the email chain, but we still don't have that information. And so we believe he might have destroyed evidence, but again, we're not there. We're not inside the agency. I think HHS and then Inspector General is investigating this, but these investigations always take time. Nobody ever seems to have enough investigators, enough resources for it. Again, I hate to be such a Debbie Downer here, but these investigations are tough slog.
I mean, it's really important actually to show the beast that we're up against. And obviously, there was a lot of hopium about the Epstein list. It's just like a good example, right, of something that you're probably just never going to get because there's been so many years and so much decay and so much corruption and so many people that need to be protected. And it's not realistic to tell people that you're just going to get, all the evidence. There's too much of a cover up. So I guess that leads to the question, President Trump making a ton of news this morning saying there's got to be a special prosecutor to look into this. You've obviously looked into it. You've been one of the bravest single voices in the Senate, perhaps sometimes the only voice, Senator, that would talk about this, the stolen election in 2020. Do you support a special prosecutor for this?
Yeah. We need people with the power and the resources, the manpower to go and investigate this. We also need whistleblowers. people with integrity that don't like the fact that probably crimes are committed, that would come forward because they have firsthand knowledge. They save documents on their iPhone or on their computers, and then bring that forward because if somebody else has destroyed it, by the way, it's hard to destroy evidence now today with the internet. For example, Dr. David Morans, this is the guy who wrote about how he had somebody inside the FOIA office that pretty well helped him avoid maintaining records that could be FOIA'd. So that's why he was sending everybody out to contact me by email, by Gmail. We didn't get that from HHS. We got that from a university who's on the email chain. And then my staff literally pulled that email out of a production of about 115,000 pages, pulled that needle out of that haystack. That's what we're talking about here. Now, to me, that was a bombshell revelation that somebody pretty high up in HHS was literally doing everything they could to avoid storing what should be federal records and keep them available and make them available to the public under FOIA. They were obviously purposely evading that process. But that was one piece of evidence, one email that we got from a university, not from the federal agency itself. So you have to stitch all these things together. You got to find those needles in the haystack and then pull that thread and see if there's other documentation. But again, this is what whistleblowers are crucial. Remember whistleblowers during Watergate. Wouldn't have gotten anywhere without people coming forward and spilling their guts. We need people coming forward and spilling their guts. Unfortunately, most of those people in the deep state, they're not our friends. They're part of the radical left that is destroying this country.
So can you give people any shred of hope here that there's going to be some type of prosecution, some type of criminal referral? Do you have active whistleblowers right now on any of these said issues? Obviously, you've been on the show, Senator, to talk about everything from the COVID cover-up to the 2020 election to the weaponization of the FBI, Hunter Biden's laptop. Do you have any do you have any fruitful threads that are being worked on right now?
As I said, I'm a mosquito in a nudist colony. There are so many things we're looking at. And yes, you get information, but is there something bombshells? Is something that you can make public right away? And by the way, one of the reasons you don't make your evidence public right away is you don't want people to know what evidence you have, because when you subpoena them or you request their records, they're not going to give you the good stuff if they think somebody else hasn't given it to you either. So again, it's just these investigations are hard. I can't describe it any other way.
Okay. Let's talk about something that's really recent and something that's very much in the news right now, which is President Trump assassinations. Obviously, you've appeared with President Trump at these rallies. You probably remember the place and time, exactly where you were when you saw President Trump get shot in Butler. A lot of people talking about Iran potentially being a part of these assassinations or involved in them. I want to just start off. You're on the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. You've obviously have been read in perhaps on if Iran has tried to assassinate President Trump. Has Iran tried to assassinate President Trump?
The only thing I've seen of Iran is that one video where they had a robot by a golf course. That's the only evidence I've seen. We have subpoenaed the Pennsylvania State Patrol to get all of their interviews with the people on the ground there on July 13th. So we're continuing our bipartisan investigation. That also has not gone at the speed I'd like to, because we're dealing with the 3 other offices and some of them want to move faster than others. So I'd like to have our final report be bipartisan because it'd give it far greater credibility. But that's also taken a lot longer than I would have hoped.
So the only evidence that you've seen of Iran trying to assassinate President Trump is the video that we just had up. It's obviously a video. It's inflammatory. It weirdly mirrors what happened with Ryan Routh, which is somebody trying to shoot from the weeds at his golf course as Trump's golfing. But that's it. That's all the evidence that you have.
That I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Others may have more. And again, the CIA, our intelligence agencies, they don't share information freely with the members of Congress. They just don't.
So what is your take right now on the frictions with President Trump, bombing, not bombing Iran? It's obviously this was a hot button issue in the Senate this week. Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson made a lot of news with sort of their back and forth. Tucker very well. We know Ted Cruz very well. No ill will to either party, but This is clearly something that a lot of people are very focused on, but there doesn't seem to be like a full crystallization of this argument made to the American people as to why we would need to bomb Iran right now.
Well, Iran has been in a low-grade war with America for decades. I mean, ever since they took over our U.S. embassy and held 440 Americans hostage. They are the largest state sponsor of terror. They threaten shipping lanes to the Houthis. They obviously torment and engage in acts of terrorism against Israel. The October 7th attack, the brutal slaughter from Hamas, set in motion a chain of events where now Israel, finally decided they had to act. So they've taken out Hamas. Hezbollah reacted by firing rockets. Israel reacted to that, pretty well destroyed Hezbollah. We've done a lot with the Houthis, and then Iran starts directly attacking Israel. So Israel takes out their air defense systems. This is a moment in time where we can finally take care of a clear and present danger and threat to the world if Iran would become a nuclear power. And they obviously want to become one. They wouldn't have put up with these severe sanctions for decades, where all they had to do is give up nuclear enrichment. We could have given them nuclear material for their power plants if that's all they wanted. They want to have a nuclear weapon, and a nuclear weapon in the hands of Iran, that could be apocalyptic, quite honestly. So I support Israel in defending itself, and I will support any decision President Trump makes. He's not going to go in there and nation build. I think the most we would do is use our bunker-busting bombs to take out the Fordo and eliminate this threat from Iran. Then hopefully the Iranian people would rise up that they don't like being under the thumb of this brutal dictatorship, the mullahs. So hopefully that would happen. But again, I don't think America has any interest. I have no interest in going there and nation build from Iran, but I'm happy to take out that nuclear threat once and for all, because that's hanging over our head now for a decade or more.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can go back to the 80s and find articles written in the New York Times. You can go back to the year of my birth and find articles written in the New York Times about Iran is a year away from a nuclear weapon. So, I mean, I guess why haven't they made one?
I think I can't explain that. I can't necessarily say that until they maybe didn't have the moment where they wanted to use one. There's no sense in inflaming the situation and encouraging an attack against them by having one. All they had to do is be that close for the moment they finally wanted to use one. Either put it on a ship and use one of their missiles to do an EMP attack against America, or use against Israel. My guess, the time was never right for them to make that mad rush, which may have only taken a couple of weeks to actually assemble the nuclear weapons. So I think that's more a strategic decision on their part. I think they've made some pretty bad strategic decisions over the last year through their proxies. Now they're paying the price.
So would you be advising Trump, if President Trump picked up the phone, called you, would you advise him for direct military intervention from American forces in Iran right now?
No, there's a reason. There's a reason I would never want to be president of the United States. I really wouldn't want to make those calls. I'll trust President Trump to do it. I know in his heart he's just not like war. He wants peace. Classic examples when Iran, in his first administration, downed a drone and everybody's beating the drums of war. We got to retaliate. Trump finally asked the question, okay, how many Iranians are going to die in this retaliation? First of all, how expensive was that missile? Or that drone? A couple $1 million. How many people are going to lose their lives? A couple hundred. It's not worth it. Called off the attack. He is a peacemaker. He's not a war maker, but he also is going to make sure that America stays safe. And Iran with the nuclear capability, America is far less safe.
So, I mean, I agree. And it's the proudest moment I think I've ever had as an American in certainly Trump's first term was when he walked into North Korea and made peace. I mean, that's a country that we're technically at war with. Trump's not talking about potentially having Iranians inside of the Oval Office and come to make peace at the White House. I think that'd be an incredible result here, actually.
I wish the mullahs would do it. They've had that capability now for decades. Just give up enrichment, allow full inspection so that we know you're not a threat to America. Just do it. But they won't. And that speaks volumes. So now we're going to have to do it ourselves. But again, I think Trump has given them every opportunity in terms of negotiation. I think he's giving them an opportunity right now. They're just not willing to take it. So in the end, they'll probably pay the price, and we'll have to take out that nuclear capability by force.
Would you prefer would you prefer non-American interventionism in that region? Of
course, I'd prefer the mullahs just recognize reality and say, we're not going to have that capability. let's stop, let's open ourselves to inspection, let's destroy our capability, and let's enter the world of nations and behave and not sponsor terror like they do.
It's like the thing that I think it seems to be a threat here is Trump's domestic agenda, which is so important to us. We feel like there's a nuclear bomb that's already been built and it's already right here inside of the United States of America. And it's 15 to 20 million criminal aliens, many of them part of terrorist splinter cells that can and do engage in acts of terrorism here in this country. And it just seems like that needs to be something that's eliminated first, right? That seems to be like the most existential threat to our nation right now. And what I don't want to see derailed here is President Trump's domestic policy, whether it be the rescission package, right, with the DOJ cuts that's in the Senate right now, or whether, the big, beautiful bill with border funding and deportation funding. It seems like that is like the most important thing for Americans, at the moment.
Yeah, which is why we should have gone the Senate route and just passed the border funding in February. He chose not to do that, so now we got this big, messy, complex bill that we're debating. I'd extend the current tax law, I'd avoid default. But one thing I can't do is accept $2 trillion plus deficits as far as the eye can see is the new normal. We've got to do far more than what we're doing right now. So again, we're working with the White House on this. We want to see President Trump succeed. We definitely want to fund the border. We'll see how this all plays out, but we should bring up that rather than the big, beautiful bill, which is not ready for prime time. We've had it in the Senate for 2 weeks, okay? We need more time. We should bring up that rescission package and pass that next week. That's what we ought to do.
Why not? I mean, like,
I have no
Republicans?
idea.
Are there Republican senators who want shows on NPR? I don't get it, Senator.
If we don't do it, that would be my guess. Again, we never ask people to just raise their hand. It's always these private whip counts. So, my guess, if we don't bring it up next week, it's because we might have a problem passing it. And that's what President Trump ought to be pressuring the Senate to do: get the rescission package passed. And that we should have had literally dozens of rescission packages since the DOJ started uncovering this $180 billion worth of grotesque waste, fraud, and abuse.
And these packages, which is it's $9 billion, it just defunds some of these like left-wing fringe projects. We've already seen the effectiveness of defunding USAID. The DNC is broke now. I just don't understand. Has anybody made the argument to you, Senator, as to why they would vote against this from a Republican side? Because you just need a simple majority. Am I correct in that, Senator?
Yeah. Again, I don't. Yeah, we'll need everybody in the Republicans because Democrats won't vote for it. So we'll need 50 of us, and then Vice President Vance would break the tie. But again, we might not have 50. I don't know who the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 who are objecting right now are. We don't talk like that in the Senate. Apparently, we don't put pressure on people. Again, I've been very upfront in terms of where I stand on the one big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Nobody should be surprised. I've been writing about we having to return to a pre-pandemic level of spending. My 30-page report pretty well proves the only way we can even contemplate balancing the budget within 10 years is pretty dramatic spending reductions to a reasonable pre-pandemic level of spending, which, by the way, shouldn't be that hard, Benny. We increased spending over $2 trillion in 1 year. Now we're talking about reducing spending less than that over 10. I'm sorry, it's meager. It doesn't meet the moment. We have to do far more.
So it'd be it'd be nice to see if they can't cut $10 billion. If they can't cut $9 billion, then how is that even possible, Senator? Right? Like this is such a major test to see.
So
Pass out of the House. It's in the Senate. It just needs a simple majority. It's crazy.
So let me run some numbers by you because I've been focusing on pre-pandemic levels of spending. So if you eliminate Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense, that's about $5 trillion of the $7 trillion we're spending. The other $2 trillion, if you compare that to what we spent in 2019, 2014, and 1998, those actual outlays plus up for inflation population, if we would just go back to those fully inflated spending levels, we would save either $384 billion from 2019, $578 billion from 2014, and $900 billion from 1998 when we actually had a surplus. $400 to $900 billion of savings just spending at what we spent fully inflated. I mean, that's the kind of control a business person would look at. I mean, if I've managed people, right? If I would have told my managers, okay, you guys, you can increase your budgets based on inflation and the number of customers we serve. And then I come back and they go, but you're 40% higher than that, which is what we are. We're 40% higher than that under the Obama's 2014 level. I just say, what are you guys doing? Get back in line with inflation, the number of customers we serve, cut your budgets back. That'd be a 5-minute conversation. Businesses do it all the time. Why can't we do that in the federal government? It's because nobody's ever tried it. Nobody's ever put the pressure on the process to do so. I'm putting pressure on the process to do so.
Well, I mean, Godspeed in that. Obviously, I think that's, again, if you want to talk about bombs, if you want to talk about bombs that threaten America, the debt bomb is already here. It's already exploded, right? Like, this is something that's clearly detonated, and we're dealing with the radioactive fallout of it.
Yeah, we've been having a chronic debt crisis for decades. Yeah. That's why a dollar you held in 1998 is only worth 51 cents. A dollar you held in 2014 is worth 74 cents. A dollar you held in 2019 is worth 80 cents. That's the chronic debt crisis. We're trying to avoid an acute one where you have a failure of the debt auction and all of a sudden we can't borrow a dime, and then all this deficit spending is just not going to be possible. We'll just be servicing the debt and maybe have enough left over for pay some Social Security and some Medicare and a little bit of defense.
Incredible. Yeah, well, it sure as hell would be nice to fix that. We appreciate it. We know it's messy business. We appreciate it. One final thing, since we did talk about assassinations, and since you are on Homeland Security, do you know anything about the Trump assassinations that were happening? Like, has anybody briefed you in on like who Matthew Thomas Crooks was, who Ryan Routh is, like his potential like connections to Ukraine? All we get are the federal filings, Senator. Since you're on the committee and you have a clearance, and you can like go in these classified hearings, has Intel like came out and briefed you on any of this? Do we know anything about what the hell was happening?
No, listen, I've been in classified briefings. I don't think I've ever learned anything that wasn't available in the news already. So no, we again, the deep state, no matter who's in charge, just doesn't give up their secrets. So I don't know anything about the assassins at all. I don't know anything more than what you know in the news. Again, which is why you need whistleblowers with knowledge inside government come to, for example, journalists, because they actually feel more protected going to a journalist than they do coming to Congress. So again, I try and work with journalists like Julie Kelly, and we try and work with each other in terms of what we know, what she knows, try and piece things together. But it's like putting together a very, very complex, very small piece puzzle. You get little pieces at a time, trying to see the big picture.
Man, we're massive fans of the work that you do, and obviously you're at least doing it. But we're looking here at this resume. I mean, you've been on Homeland Security. You're the ranking member. You've been there for a decade, for more than a decade, 2015. And you haven't been briefed in on like any of the Trump assassinations that nearly changed Western civilization and started a civil war in this country? It seems insane, Senator. That's just crazy.
Again, we got briefed by Acting Director Rowe, but didn't really tell us much. So yeah, they'll brief us, but one of the reasons they give us secure briefings is to try and keep us quiet, because you can't talk about what you just got briefed on in a secure setting, right? So it's really one of the techniques of the deep state to keep information internal. So they don't really tell you anything new, but it gets you, oh geez, should I reveal that piece of information? Again, it's government is power, and as Lord Acton aptly noted, power corrupts. We've got a horribly corrupt federal government. It's throughout, okay? And regardless who the president is, obviously when there's a Democrat, the leftists support his agenda. They try and sabotage the agenda of President Trump. They did in his first term. They're trying to do the exact same thing now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin is just one of those guys who he just doesn't have an F to give. He's just one of those sound as a pound dudes who is like he spits fire, and he's like fights for us, and he's fighting, and he's doing the uncomfortable work in Washington, D.C., talking things that D.C. doesn't want to talk about. And he's like one of the real movers and shakers. 700,000 people follow him on X. You should be one of them. Let's get him to 1 million. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Thank you, Senator.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be actually back in the Midwest relatively soon. We're going to be ping pong balling all over the place. And you know what that means. We'll be bringing our Patriot mobile devices with us. We will be also, I think, in Washington, D.C. for July 4th. working on a number of like new special projects, and get ready for some of the special projects that we have already cooking to drop. We're excited about it, ladies and gentlemen. America's only Christian conservative wireless provider is Patriot Mobile. They keep us locked in. They are there for us no matter when we need them. And honestly, it's just so nice to know that our cash money isn't going to fund the woke left. Now, while the left has decided, especially cell phone carriers, has decided that they're not going to be woke anymore, what most of them did was just like take these operations and rename them in order to like prevent them from being sued by the federal government. So it's a total con. So don't believe any of this like, oh, we're not woke anymore, we shut down DEI. All they did was like rename it. They kept the same people, the same cancers are in there. That cancer never affected my boys at Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile keeps us locked in. They believe in faith, family, and freedom. They also believe in excellent cell phone coverage and service. Patriot Mobile is available on all 3 major networks. Right now, you can go to patriotmobile.com/Benny or call 972-PATRIOT to get a free month of service with promo code Benny. patriotmobile.com/Benny. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show for the first time, Alex Sawyer, who's a lawyer and author of Lawless Lawfare. She's also a legal affairs reporter for the Washington Times. She's just an absolute subject matter expert on everything that's happening in the country right now. Let's go. Alex, good morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so let's begin with President Trump. Some of the President Trump news that's happening right now. Donald Trump saying he wants a special prosecutor to look into the 2020 election. What is the mechanisms for that to happen? How does that work? And should we be expecting that to happen?
Well, Washington loves a special counsel. It's been a few months since we've had one. I was hearing some of your previous guests, and I actually jotted down a few notes. I think we could do well with 3 special counsels. One, looking at the 2020 election, some of the stuff you were highlighting, Chinese involvement potentially. We could also definitely use a special counsel looking at the use of the auto pen and what was going on the past 4 years in the Biden White House. And then, of course, you referenced this in terms of the January 6th pledge, but a special counsel to look into all these trumped up charges that we saw handed down to the president and his supporters, January 6th defendants. And even in my book, I talked to people outside of DC, like Texas, that did some counter protests to the Biden bus, that then were looking at charges under the Ku Klux Klan Act for violating the right to vote, had to go to trial for this, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, just everyday Americans, basically to defend their First Amendment rights. And so I think that there's a lot that could be investigated. And I think it's a lot on the FBI director's shoulders, the DOJ, Pam Bondi. Maybe they could use some help. And so the mechanism would be for Pam Bondi to go ahead and start assigning people in charge of these tasks.
I mean, this would be subject to the Attorney General, right? Their discretion to appoint the special counsel?
It is basically subject to the Attorney General. One of the issues that Jack Smith ran into with Judge Eileen Cannon down in Florida in the documents case, if you recall, was the it's called standing. Okay. Like, does he have standing to serve as special counsel? I don't want to get too wonky, but basically with Jack Smith, he was a private citizen at the time he was appointed special counsel. So there's some hurdles that need to be made when Pam Bondi selects someone, make sure that they were already, Senate confirmed, maybe already serving as a U.S. attorney that could take on this project.
So President Trump has also been handed quite a legal victory here with Gavin Newsom. There's a federal court that has said on a 3-0 basis that
even a Biden appointee. What do you know?
Yes, that's right. Can you talk us through the legalities of that? I know that news cycle is dying down. Obviously, President Trump, massive W in that news cycle.
Yeah, I don't see why California would want to appeal to the Supreme Court on this one. That doesn't seem like a very wise move. So yeah, I think you're right. It could be dying down. But what we had was this spat between Gavin Newsom, upset that the president sent the National Guard in to protect federal officers and federal property, the ICE facility, and all the unrest that was going on in Los Angeles when the governor and his local police weren't able to step up and do enough to make it safe and protect federal officers. And so he challenged basically the right of the president to deploy the National Guard. And he found, as we see, and I talk about in Lawless Lawfare, a lot of these lower court judges, they're favorable forums for the left to go to, and he initially won. So the lower court judge initially said that the president didn't have this authority to deploy the National Guard to protect federal officers. It just kind of was a head-scratching decision. So no surprise on appeal that you have a 3-judge panel, 2 Trump appointees and 1 Biden appointee, all saying, no, the president does have this authority, that there's evidence of violence committed against federal law enforcement, and that this is his duty.
So then this is exactly where it belonged, right? With the president. And the president had full legal authority.
Yeah.
The president has
talking about federal agents and federal property, that there would be an authority for the president to deploy who he needs to safeguard those. Yes. And it does not look like Gavin Newsom has any sort of governor veto to, do away with this.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's definitely a court win for Trump. It takes him a while. He has to climb the ladder. He has to go to these appeals courts. He has to go to the Supreme Court often to get the win, but he usually does. That's part of this lawfare game, I think, is going to these forums, slowing the process, slowing his agenda. Any sort of hurdle that the left can put in his way, they have. And they try to do it during the campaign, as we saw.
Yeah, it's something that I've been wanting to ask a legal expert, and since you've literally written the book on it, maybe you can answer. When it comes to Gavin Newsom trying to claw back the National Guard, sanctuary cities in and of themselves, it seems like neo-Confederatism. It seems as though like there is an entirely different class of thinking inside of this country with specific blue state governors and mayors saying that they do not have to abide by the federal rule of law and statutes.
And they get so upset when they say that President Trump isn't abiding by the rule of law, right? It's just, there's no standards in Washington or in politics if there's not double standards, right? But it's an interesting thing you always see as you're kind of getting into like these blue states all of a sudden want to ride in on the 10th Amendment and the state's authority over the government. But it's just not the case, especially when we're talking about issues like you were bringing up in California. These are national security concerns. Yes. And it's typically courts always really defer to the executive. They don't second guess the executive on the areas of national security. And until recently, really, until we've seen it with President Trump.
Yeah. I don't know what your take is on the Supreme Court. It seems like every week there is a decision that I rage against, and then every other week there's a decision that I'm really proud of. And President Trump has ended child mutilation madness in this country by, 1, becoming obviously a cultural vector against it, but then 2, in the Supreme Court this week, where the Supreme Court ruled, I believe it was 6-3, in favor of Tennessee.
That's right.
And against child mutilation, which of course any human being with a soul would be in favor of. I find it ironic that the only people who ruled in favor of it are childless women, which seems extremely strange. And the Democrat Party is becoming quite quickly the party of psychotic childless women and their agenda.
This was the case this term that had the most attention for sure inside the courtroom. Since they've started live streaming the arguments, it hasn't been as packed as it used to be after COVID, but this one was. There's tons of attention. And when I left arguments, it was no surprise that the Attorney General out of Tennessee won. He had a better day in court. And I don't think that the real argument here, and something we should really highlight, is, if you recall, it was a few years ago, there was a decision called Bostock, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of gay and transgender employees in the workforce. So basically a Title VII civil rights case saying, sex discrimination is unlawful against gays and transgenders. You really see a lot of advocates trying to use that ruling in different areas. So like, for example, with transgender youth and their medical treatment. And the Supreme Court shut that down effectively, that trying to limit how far Bostock could go. And I think that's a big win for conservatives, because there was some concern the Biden administration was trying to use Bostock in schools, talking about locker rooms, bathrooms. So that was a big takeaway from this case that I noticed that hasn't gotten really much attention. And the way the court did that was they looked at this law that basically says, no puberty blockers, no hormones for minors looking to transition or suffering from gender dysphoria. And they said, the challengers say that this is sex discrimination, but this really turns on age. If you're an adult, you can have these treatments. And aside from age, it also turns on the diagnosis. So yeah, in some cases, girls and boys could have puberty blockers if necessary, but not for gender dysphoria. And therefore there is no sex discrimination. And, it was a clear win.
And so you were there at the court for the arguments?
I was, yes. And it was pretty packed. The press section was very lively.
What is it like watching these Supreme Court justices ask questions? We've heard that Sotomayor needs to wear a helmet to go to work, that she's so low IQ.
Well, it's very interesting, and I wish sometimes that there are cameras in the courtroom, because it's kind of fun to see. I think it would actually help the American public have more confidence in the court, because they talk to each other, they whisper. It's not always Republicans just talking to Republicans, or the Democrat appointees talking to the Democrat appointees. There's oftentimes Sotomayor and Gorsuch would whisper to each other. Sometimes one of my favorite, I can't remember the case off the top of my head, but Justice Jackson was on one of her long rants, and over on the other side of the bench was Justice Gorsuch and Justice Barrett, and they were totally entranced on something on the ceiling. They kept pointing up, talking about something on the ceiling. And I was like, okay, I guess they are not with Justice Jackson on this one. Her line of thinking, you can totally cross them off. So it's very eye-opening. And I do think, though, that there's a lot of civility on the court, and it helps, the American public to see that. One of the things I note in my book actually was, if you recall, there was those challenges to try to remove Trump from the ballot all across the states on this the so-called insurrection clause in the Constitution. And they took that Colorado case, and before the court ruled on it, there was a poll that showed that a majority of Americans agreed that Trump should be left off ballots because of this. But by speaking in one voice, the court, that was a unanimous ruling saying no, that the insurrection clause doesn't apply to Trump. He can be on the ballot. The polls totally changed. The majority were like, yes, this is the right decision. And it just kind of spoke to me that if the court were to issue more unanimous opinions, or more or less politically divided ones, that would help bolster the public's, view of the court and confidence in it.
I agree with you, actually, and there should be some issues that should be 9-0. There's been a couple of 9-0 decisions. Goodness, what was the one that was recent? What's that?
Is it don't touch our children would be one of them.
Yeah.
The other one that's coming up next week, I think we have already an opinion day for Thursday, which is one I'm really watching, is those Pride books. I don't know if you and your audience were following that, but out of Montgomery County, parents used to get an opt-out notice if their children, pre-K, age 3 and up through elementary, would have to sit in on Pride and LGBTQ story hour. And some of these books had kids spotting items from a vocabulary list, like leather, drag queen, underwear. And I don't know why. I have a 3-year-old. I have no idea why she would need to be reading that. So the parents protested this. They said, we used to get an opt-out option, but now we're not being given an opt-out option. We're of different faiths, and we're filing a First Amendment violation here that we should be able to remove our child from these readings if we so wish. The Supreme Court took that up, and all the justices were I think it won't be as politically divided. They were kind of like, what is the point of a 3-year-old reading a Pride puppy book?
Yeah, well, try explaining that to Ketanji Brown Jackson, if anyone is even able to get out of the court before she's done speaking. So you're saying that this chart is correct. This is a chart. I'm sorry to just throw this at you here live, but this chart goes viral.
The guy they're speaking, that looks right.
Yeah, the I'm speaking. Okay, so yeah. This is the Kamala Harris I'm speaking chart, where Ketanji Brown Jackson says more than double the amount of words of the next 2 or 3 justices.
Yeah, she
Amount of words
does.
spoken. Okay, so this is correct because you've been in these hearings.
This is correct. And I covered Capitol Hill, and I will tell you, so when you go in the courtroom, you don't have electronics, you can't leave. Like if you leave to go to the restroom, you can't get back in. But there's some lawmakers that do this, right? That during hearings, you kind of know the ones that are going to talk such a long time that you have time to run to the bathroom and run back and not miss anything. Ketanji Brown Jackson would be my bathroom break because I know I wouldn't miss anything if I had the opportunity. Like when I come back, I could get the argument again because she would still keep talking. She's been a force, and usually they're quite timid when they first start on the court, but not her. So got to give her that.
Yeah. What is a woman? Joe Biden, I'm going to appoint a black woman. What's a woman? I don't know. It's a great moment in time. Really special.
I've seen some people say, well, how come she hasn't recused herself from some of these cases dealing with sex discrimination if she doesn't understand what a woman is?
She's not a biologist, Alex.
That's true. I know. I'm not a biologist. But I have a good idea.
Biologist. My producer is telling me that she spoke 114 times more words than Clarence Thomas.
Yes. And you know what? I will say the new format that they've started since COVID, they actually go kind of, justice by justice and have them ask questions instead of kind of a free for all. And Justice Thomas opens up with a question every time, which is great because there used to be some arguments where he just wouldn't speak. And, it's good to hear his voice. It's good to let him kind of start the tone of arguments. He's the most senior justice.
96 words? I mean, that's unbelievable. That is like, what a G. What a stoic, like every man looks at that and goes like, that's power. Like what a stoic and wise man who can only speak 96 words and be so powerful.
There's just such a difference in questioning tone when I look at that list. One of the reasons I think Ketanji Brown Jackson has so many more words is there's sometimes when she's trying to actually understand the attorney's argument and she's asking probing questions. There's other times where I think she sees the attorney that maybe she thinks should have the better argument not doing as well. So she comes in with her own kind of tirades or wrapped up in a question trying to present, shouldn't you be arguing X, Y, and Z? And so it ends up being quite lengthier than what you get from someone like a Judge Barrett, a Justice Barrett. She doesn't really have that type of, that's not her way of questioning.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. Hey, got it. Hey, team, what's up? Let me know. We're good. So here's what happened. And a massive apology to our guest, Alex Sawyer. You might be able to hear it through my microphone. A literal lightning strike on our studio. There was like the whole studio rumbled, and the whole freaking thing, just like the entire studio, just went offline. Alex, hi. Are you still with us?
Hi, I'm here. Yes.
I sincerely apologize for that. There's a monster thunderstrike that just happened here in Tampa, which it is thunderstorm season here. And boy, it just kicked up. All the lights went off. We apologize.
No problem.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was. I saw you kind of froze, and I was like, did I say something? Is he
No, actually, we were just talking about the strength of men who say nothing. Well, maybe I should practice more of that, actually. Maybe that was God. Maybe that was God saying, be more like Clarence Thomas. Say nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just getting into basically their style difference. And Justice Barrett is not one to probe or push lawyers to make the certain argument that she wants them to make. Whereas Justice Jackson does tend to do that here and there. But sometimes they surprise us, right? Like there was that January 6th obstruction case, and I think it was Barrett who ended up with the Democratic appointees, and then Justice Jackson ended up with the conservative majority there. So you just kind of never know.
You kind of never know. Really quickly, Justice Barrett, what's your take on her? Like a lot of people have been like, I'm very disappointed. What, since you actually go to these hearings and follow it, like what's your take? A lot of people think that some people have come on this program and speculated that because she had the left target her so severely and march around her house, that's affecting her vote. But your thoughts?
So I have a couple of thoughts. First, when a justice tends to join the court, we usually see them, I would say, align more with Chief Justice Roberts at first. It usually takes a year or so for them to kind of break their own mold. We started to see that with Justice Kavanaugh. He's kind of broken away from agreeing with Justice Roberts a lot of times, less so. They're still, I would consider them in the middle of the court. Justice Barrett, I feel like she does tend to agree with Justice Roberts quite a bit. One court watcher I spoke to has an analysis of her that she's a law professor. That's her background. And so she kind of talks herself into all these different arguments and ways to look at things, and then ends up typically on the side of the government, which then, puts her not with the majority often. So, I think it's still early to tell. We'll see, especially as some of these interesting cases come across, like the birthright citizenship case we're going to be getting likely next week. It has to do with nationwide injunctions. Since she's a law professor, they talked a lot about, not to get wonky, but like class actions, if that's a way to kind of slow down these nationwide injunctions from taking place so quickly. There's hurdles that plaintiffs would have to go through to be able to certify a class. That was something that some of the justices seemed interested in. So that could be an area of expertise for her.
All right. Well, let's hope so. We're hoping we're not looking down the barrel of another Sandra Day O'Connor, right? Like, don't worry, she's such a conservative. She's like, well, I'm Ronald Reagan. She'll be great. And no, it was a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some of them surprise us. I was very surprised with Justice Gorsuch citing in the Bostock case with the sex discrimination being extended to LGBTQ community. That was a surprise.
Very interesting. All right. Well, Alex, now we know who to come back on the program when we have these kind of big cases. And it looks like we're going to have quite a few barreling down the pike. And so we look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And having this massive thunderstorm.
Yes,
or maybe an IDF airstrike, some are saying in the comment section. We don't know. We're not sure. But whatever it was, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you, Alex, for sticking with us. Everybody follow Alex. Here's her X account right there. Again, she's a great reporter, and she has a wonderful book out. It's called Lawfare. Here's the Amazon link.
Thank you. You hear from Don Jr., Laura Trump in there talking about how the lawfare during the campaign impacted the family. They basically were very convinced that had he not won, he would be behind bars.
Clearly. And if they're able to get it, as soon as he gets out of office, they're planning on putting him behind bars again.
That's a possibility I explore in the book as well. You're right.
All right. Well, Alex, thank you for your work. Godspeed.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have footage actually from inside of the studio. What was happening? He went offline. We had another camera rolling. That's Klein. That's actually Klein. It's speaking his native tongue. We have a GoPro on the corner of the studio. And so we were able to capture that. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, looks like it's time for an Ask Benny. Here we go. Let's go quickly before God strikes us down one more time. Here we go. Yes, all right. Conan the Barbarian meme, Trump. Well, that looks like a direct order, Jerry. So get on with it, right? Does that exist right now? Ashley, Jerry, anyone? Does anybody know? Like I'm sure it's the lamentations of your women, kind of thing. That with President Trump face swapped. We got that for you, Ted Cook. We'll get that next week. Juiced, back again. Here we go. I'm curious, how could it play out what if in the near future it's fully proven that 2020 was stolen by China? Could an extra term be granted? Because what else would be a fair exchange for people missing out on their actual vote? Yeah, that's a great point. We've often argued that President Trump already had his first term stolen, had a second term stolen, and so why not? Yeah. Obviously, President Trump could still be in the executive branch. You just have Donald Trump run as vice president for J.D. Vance. There's no rules against that. Boy, oh boy, and he just moves down the street to one Naval Observatory Circle. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly what do you get for that as compensatory damage if you prove that your election was stolen. We'll have to see, Juiced. Timothy Zaher says, can you make Christmas ornaments of Trump's win by counties available? The answer is yes. We have an entire Christmas line this year that we're going to be running, and we're very excited about it. So there we go. Thank you for that question, and also that incentive, ladies and gentlemen, to keep it going. Just let's grab just a couple of super chats here because we talked about it yesterday. We just had an IRGC attack in London, guys. Uh-oh. Really? Is that true? Was it an Iranian attack? I'm not sure. Was it an Iranian attack on our show? I don't know. Well, let's keep going. Elise 777, suck it up, Gen X. Like, we didn't know since 1977 there would be Jack left, so we don't count on it. Took it out of the equation. I agree. Gen X and millennials, all of us are like, we don't need these entitlement programs. Like, we'd rather have our paychecks. Wouldn't we? We'd rather keep our paychecks and pay less taxes than have all these entitlement programs. We can take care of ourselves. Totally agree. Anyone thinking this whole Iran-Israel thing is a distraction from the Epstein files? Absolutely. Not exactly the Epstein files. I mean, if I were to have a vote, I would probably say a distraction from President Trump's win in Los Angeles. Notice how like this comes like right on the heels of Donald Trump like having massive victories. One of them we just covered in Los Angeles. Man. Trump card by Dinesh D'Souza. That's exactly right. Dinesh D'Souza's done excellent work on all of this. Check out 2000 Mules. Best show, Benny. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ace of Spades. God bless you. Here we go. What's wrong with conservative senators? I don't know, Laguna Berry. I tried to get to that question. I tried to ask Ron Johnson about it. Like, what's wrong with these cucks? Ron Johnson's one of the good ones. S. Joe says Aaron Lewis opens his show with this version of the anthem. Hell yeah. Which version of the anthem? I don't know. Freaking cool, though. Aaron Lewis. Yeah. We got 15 mail-in ballots in Bethesda, says They Love Charlie. Yeah. Dude, it's absolutely crazy. All right. Here we go. Laguna Berry, back at it, saying my husband got sick just before the 2024 election, passed away. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. That's awful. But I did put in a vote for him, even though I knew he supported Trump. No, voting integrity matters. Well, wow, what a story. Thanks for not doing that. I guess what Laguna Berry is saying there is that there could have been, very easy election fraud, opportunity because she has the mail-in ballot. Yeah. And here we go. Giovanna De La Rosa says, please interview ICE, who is being taken. People in the process. I love my husband. 2 years is believing the MSM. He's still living there because we are doing things legally. Please help me. Please help me see him. I don't know if I completely understand here, but I can announce that we are in the process of locking in, or have already locked in, Tom Homan for an interview to be live on the show. So maybe then he can answer the question, ask the question. All right. So there we go. Patriot Force USA. There's a crazy report coming out of that Palestinian zealots raided a UK airbase, damaging British aircraft. Uh-oh. Goodness, is that true? Yikes. Okay. Here's something that's a great honor for us, which is Steve Bannon. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, one more. Good morning, Benny. Can you talk about Bay City County, DMV theft, ring, CDL for the illegal immigrants? Bay County, DMV theft ring for illegal immigrants. We'll look into it. Good morning to you, Lady Trucker. Thank you for being such a proud member of the Benny Brigade. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody else who's a member of the Benny Brigade, I guess, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon shouted us out on War Room this morning. Freaking awesome. Here we go. Here's Steve Bannon's. Do we have this clip? Okay. Here's Steve Bannon. This is my first time seeing it. Producer say, give it a play. Okay, let's go.
Great work. Charlie Kirk has been doing the great work that Benny Johnson's been doing. So many other people, just absolutely incredible. The podcasters. This is a team effort just to present facts. Remember, we're a week ago. Think of where we were a week ago. A week ago, the chest beating, the thumping, and I want to thank my Real America's Voice distribution partners and my crack team here. I think we put a marker out. When we finished the cold open last Friday morning, what did we end with? We ended with the shock and awe of 19 March of 2003, and also the march up to Baghdad, when all the people, were beating their chests, and this is going to be easy, and what a victory. We still have, 25,000, 30,000 troops that are now exposed to the Persians for counterattack. When you deal in the Middle East, understand that history can come up and grab you, okay? It's unbelievable, the naivete, and quite frankly, it's almost criminal what is going on. In fact, I think an investigation into what is the information Fox News is getting, is money changing hands, are they getting ads? I mean, I would actually say a FARA investigation should take place of Fox News, and it should take place of Fox News starting today.
Wow. Well, we are the media now. We're the news now. Charlie Kirk. And it's our great and absolute honor, humbly, to be able to deliver the news to you every single day here on the single fastest growing news stream in the country. We're just profoundly thankful for that. We're thankful for you. We thank God every single day. We get down on our knees and we humbly ask to be fast and accurate. Our verse of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Ephesians 5:6. Let no one deceive you with empty words. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of empty words right now going around this administration. There's a lot of empty words going around right now. President Trump, you got to pray for President Trump. You got to pray for clarity and wisdom in these moments. There's a lot of people, a lot of internal fighting. We're trying our hardest, oh, God help us, to stay out of it. Trying our hardest to stay out of it and to do the thing that we absolutely know is blessed, which is peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, those who make peace. The most justifiable violence in human history was the disciples pulling out the sword and striking the mob that was coming for Jesus. And Christ said, put away the sword, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And we don't want this administration to die by the sword. We want to be strong. We want to promote justice. We want to promote, obviously, the American way and our homeland, our culture. We are a people, we are a proud people that has a history and a future. But only if we rid ourselves of foreign entanglements, much like General George Washington said in his last speech to the American people. Cannot be brought down by this. We have too many problems here at home, and we want to pray for President Trump right now for clarity of purpose and for clarity of action. And so, ladies and gentlemen, don't let President Trump be deceived, and blessed are the peacemakers. That's it. That's what we want. Well, blessed are the peacemakers. Seems like that's what Senator Johnson wanted, too. Cool. That's what General Flynn wanted. Cool. We can get that going. We can get that rolling here on this program. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. It's been always an honor this week. We'll be back next week, locked and loaded. Until then, thank you for marching with us on to victory. In the end, we win. It's your boy, Benny. See you.
The Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime.
It's kind of a tradition down here. We tape these videotapes to the missiles. Each one is labeled evidence. This one's about a president.
I have been training for this day my whole life. Humans think this is a religious war, but I say, bah!
Imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey.
We have advanced technology these days. When the time is right, I will push the button.
This is where we launch the tapes with all the evidence. People say this war is about killing people, but really, it's about protecting our elite.
I don't know if we have nukes or not, but I got this button.
The biggest ships in the sea, all owned by the oldest kings, and their dying legacy, media deal reads. Soon will the Benny Show come to mind, the salt from lives for fun. Leave the gold and bring the gun, we sail for #1. Show come to mind, the salt from lives for fun. Leave the gold and bring the gun, we sail for #1. The biggest ships in the sea, all owned by the oldest king.